You're watching Reality Check. Since the Pegasus Spyware scandal broke, the Indian government has been in a state of quasi-denial, never directly admitting that it bought the invasive Israeli-made spyware, but also not outright denying it, resorting instead to obfuscation and also playing the attempt to malign India card, hoping it's unclear what, that the controversy will fade away, even though there is a Supreme Court-ordered probe into the scandal. But now, after the New York Times reported last week that the Indian government had indeed bought Pegasus in 2017 as part of a multi-billion-dollar defense deal. Now, the Pegasus scandal had first broken last year when a consortium of news organizations, including The Wire, reported that the military-grade spyware, which is only sold to governments, was used to target government critics, including those in India. Pegasus potential targets in India included Rahul Gandhi, poll strategist Prashant Kishore, former election commissioner Ashok Lavasa, and several others. The government had responded with a series of non-denials. In Parliament, the minister said that it was a sensational attempt to malign Indian democracy and its well-established institutions. India had established protocols when it comes to surveillance, which have stood the test of time. He also said that NSO, the maker of the spyware, had also said that the list of countries showing Pegasus is incorrect. It's evident that NSO has also rubbished the claims in the media reports. The New York Times, however, reported that India had in fact bought the software in 2017, coinciding with the visit by Prime Minister Modi to Israel, signaling a thaw in the relationship between both countries. The New York Times article said the Modi visit was notably cordial, complete with carefully staged managed moments of him and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu walking barefoot on a local beach. Their countries had agreed on the same sale of a package of sophisticated weapons and intelligence worth roughly $2 billion, with Pegasus and a missile system as the centerpieces. Now, the article didn't cite a specific source for its claims, but referred to dozens of interviews with government officials, leaders of intelligence and law enforcement agencies, business executives and privacy activists in a dozen countries. The year-long investigation, the newspaper reported, revealed that America's FBI too had bought and tested the spyware for years with plans to use it for domestic surveillance until it decided not to deploy the tools. In fact, America, in November last year, put the NSO group on what is known as its entities list, saying that based on evidence that these entities, including NSO, developed and supplied spyware to foreign governments that use these tools to target government officials, journalists and business people and so on, they have been essentially sanctioned. This means that the companies will not be able to access American hardware and software. But as the New York Times tells it, several other countries, including India, not only bought the spyware, but used it to target dissidents and critics. And as of date, the Indian government has yet to come out with a direct response to the New York Times story. All right, let's go across now to panel. We have with us Phineas Ruckert, journalist, Forbidden Stories, is one of the organizations involved with the initial investigation into Pegasus. Omar Ben Jacob, tech and cyber reporter of the Haaretz newspaper in Israel. We have with us M.K. Venu, founding editor of The Wire, which is one of the Indian partners of the global investigation. PKD Nambiar, BJP supporter, and Shama Mohammed, spokesperson of the Congress. Omar Ben Jacob, first to you, this big New York Times scoop now, it's been building up in a way that there would be some revelations, though the NYT didn't name its sources. Are we to assume, Ronan Bergman, I believe, is the journalist who worked on the Israel end of it, that basically it seems to suggest that people in the Israeli security establishment, perhaps people in NSO itself, are now, and others in that ecosystem are now starting to, in a way, spill the beans on what exactly happened, which countries bought it, and how it was used or misused?
So I think you're absolutely right. I think what's important to remember about the New York Times story is that a lot of it was not actually new. A lot of it actually confirmed stuff that has been reported over the years by everyone from people like Forbidden Stories to Haaretz. Haaretz, I can say, has reported a lot about the Gulf deals.
Right.
So in essence, the New York Times, what it actually offered is exactly what you're saying. So in the sense, I would say we got the official narrative now. So this is the official narrative from people within NSO and also within the Israeli defense establishment, and the message is clear. NSO was, or Pegasus was, a key part of Israeli diplomacy. And in India, and I don't think this is new, we knew this in the past, yeah? Reporters who'd covered Modi's visit, and also reports that have come out through the wire, we knew Pegasus was in use, and we knew it played this deal. I would actually like to add something and say that for me, the big headline there was actually something else, and that was the fact that not only governments such as India are using this software and bought it. For example, the FBI was also very interested in the software.
Yes.
It was not part of the New York Times report, but Israeli media has reported bombshell stuff these past few weeks that the Israeli police are also using this spyware. And in all those cases, too, and at least in the Israeli case, you see how the misuse happens almost immediately, right? So the moment the Israeli police have this technology, it's also used against protest leaders, and it's used not, I would say, to fight serious crime. And in that sense, I think the software and its use is that is the reason why Pegasus likes to present, or NSO likes to present themselves in the way they did in the New York Times story, which is a tool of Israeli diplomacy,
right,
and not as a very abusive spyware that can, target anyone in any country, no matter who your regime is.
Right. Now, of course, Umar, you're right when you say that a lot of those revelations had come out. But Phineas, the point is that if you look at India, for example, while it was a kind of worst kept secret that the Indian government may have in fact bought and used Pegasus, it hadn't actually been said so in so many words. So for us here in India, the big revelation was the fact that according to the New York Times, India did in fact buy Pegasus in 2017 as part of a kind of weapons deal, and it may well have been used here in India. But the fact is, and this is actually in a way more significant, the silence of the Indian government even now remains because they still haven't come out and outright denied it. So in that sense, with each new revelation, governments that may have actually bought and used or misused the software are running out of wiggle room.
Exactly. I think part of what has really made this new revelation strike a nerve in India is that is seeming to be an answer to many of the questions that were brought up after the Pegasus project revelations. The most important one of which is, did India buy Pegasus? And what the New York Times report seems to be saying is that yes, indeed it did, and that the timing of that purchase, as reported in the New York Times, also does seem to coincide with a lot of the reporting that the Pegasus project members, including The Wire, had done in terms of when different activists, journalists, human rights defenders, and politicians started being attacked.
Okay. Right. Okay, it's interesting, Venu. It's now been almost a week since the New York Times story has come out, and even now there's been no categorical statement from the Indian government. There's been no denial. There's been no acceptance. There's been a complete silence. I think what we've seen is, or rather, all we've seen is a tweet by a union minister, V.K. Singh, who said this has come out in New York Times. He called it Supari media, which means a kind of, sold out or hit job media. But that's it. That silence itself is telling.
Yeah, Srinivasan, I'm a bit puzzled as to why would the Indian government not just, to start with, just concede that yes, Pegasus was bought by maybe some of our agencies. Simple truth that it was bought. Every other country, Srinivasan, has conceded. France conceded. Germany has conceded that yes, its police did buy Pegasus. US has conceded. Now, why would and subsequently Apple has gone to court. It has sued NSO. WhatsApp has gone to court, has sued NSO. Why would India still maintain such a stony silence? It's almost like silence, guilt by silence. I think they better come out with something now. Now what they say is, in Parliament also they were saying that Supreme Court is looking at it. Now, Supreme Court can be looking at various aspects, but it does not interfere with the government at least conceding that yes, it's a software which other countries bought.
Venu, in a way, we know the reason why not. Because you're basically then going to have to admit that you may have used this spyware against your critics and opponents. Right? So, if the first acceptance is that you have bought it, then the second is that you used it and it's possibly illegal. Right? Because of the nature of the spyware. It's not a phone intercept which is permitted under Indian law. It's basically hacking and taking over devices. So, the implications are politically explosive, which could be one of the reasons for the silence. But PKD Nambiar, is that now becoming increasingly embarrassing for the government that first you try to give obfuscation, you say we don't know anything about it, this is an anti-India conspiracy, then the Supreme Court hauls up the government and says you can't hide behind national security. Now the New York Times have come out and said India did buy it, it was during Prime Minister Modi's visit. Government is still silent.
I don't know whether the government of India requires to be articulating any of its opinion or views or denying or accepting anything because of an international media, which I call it, of course, a motivated media is talking about anything. I personally believe I have highest
when you say
degree
motivated,
of trust.
Just one quick point I want to remind that the Prime Minister himself wrote an op-ed in the New York Times not that long ago.
See, I said it's my opinion. I can be wrong, so I always look at so I expect
fair
you
enough.
to give me uninterrupted 1 minute. So I'm only saying that look at the timing of this particular article or the opinion or the research or finding of New York Times just before the parliament, one of the most important parliament session is just to begin. We know that our last parliament session was just washed out because of this Pegasus issue.
My God.
I, as a citizen of India, believes in and trust my Supreme Court to the core, and I have the highest degree of trust that if a Supreme Court of India, a matter is sub judice, and if a Supreme Court of India has already kept a judicial officer. No, Srinivasan, if you wanted to say that it's we have bought the government has neither denied it nor accepted
one
it.
second. PKD, one second. Just look at your response. Hold on. Now, just understand what the implications of what you're saying. You're saying an article in the New York Times and a global investigation which is covering misuse or abuse of Pegasus in multiple countries around the world is somehow designed to disrupt Indian Parliament session. I'm just saying this is the kind of typical conspiracy theorizing which governments use when they want to hide from the truth. Number two, Mr. Nambiar, the reason why it even went to the Supreme Court, which you have great faith in, because the Indian government didn't want to act. Other governments did try to investigate whether they themselves used it or not. Not every government, but some did. India was one of the governments that put its head in the sand. The Supreme Court had to then say that we cannot give the center a free pass on national security. Right to privacy is sacrosanct. Pegasus and spyware like that could have a chilling effect on freedom of speech. The government had to be censured by the Supreme Court, and then a committee has been formed. So I'm saying it is now reached a point where the government, if they have bought this spyware, they should come out and tell the public, because it is potentially very dangerous in a democracy.
No. I think you are absolutely, completely messed it. So if you really recall in our own discussion in your channel, what the Supreme Court has said, whatever it has said is fine. The government has never said that it is not open for a inquiry. What all the union government has said in the court is that it is ready to give all the information to a committee which is formed either by the government or Supreme Court.
It had to say that in court. It didn't say that in Parliament, that it was open to an inquiry. In Parliament, it said this is all malign, motivated and to target India. It didn't say it did not say it is open for an inquiry.
Srinivasan, a government such a country like India, a democracy like India, on a newspaper report or an online newspaper comes up and gives some kind of a report, it will not be
then
going for an inquiry or it will not
Court? Then why is it? No, I'm saying you can't have it both ways. Okay, Shaba Mohammed.
No. You're mixing it up. The government.
Okay, I am mixing it up. Fine. The government is infallible. Shama Mohammed. When Rahul Gandhi says treason. Okay, one second. Shama, when Rahul Gandhi says treason, when the Congress says that this is treason, the argument being it is in the court, there is an inquiry committee. Should the opposition be jumping the gun?
Srinivasan, this is treason. This is let's understand, many other countries, they have used this, but they were not democracies. NSO sells it to governments to use it against drug lords to find out where terrorists are. But in this country, they have used it. Why is it treason? Because you've used it on Supreme Court judges, you have used it on raw officers, you have used it on CBI directors, you have used it on the EC, you have used it on opposition leaders, chief ministers, former chief ministers before 2019 on Rahul Gandhi. We don't know how the election would have gone if it was not used. Number two, very important, is that this, you mentioned two ministers, you said the defense minister said, and Ashwini, the IT minister said on the parliament that, there's nothing called Pegasus, they have not used or whatever. But even an RTI reply from the Home Ministry said that, they have nothing to do with Pegasus. And finally, when the Supreme Court asked the government, they gave a sworn affidavit in the Supreme Court saying that they have nothing to do with Pegasus. That means they have lied to the Supreme Court with so much of investigative reporting coming out saying that in 2017, let me just finish my point, please, Srinivasan.
Yes.
In 2017, the NCSE, which comes under NSA, from 33 crores, which they had the budget, went up to 333 crores. And very important point, the Supreme Court has put under it certain people who are depositing in front of it. The cyber security expert who is depositing, read it out. There is presence of strong indicators pointing to the involvement of the state, its intelligence and the law enforcement agencies in using the Pegasus spyware for unauthorized surveillance against individuals. So what I want to say finally, Modi wants, Modi wants India to be a police state. It reminds me of the Stasi police of East Germany. This is what's happening in India. We are going to be we are a police state right now.
All right. Omar bin Jacob, I think this is a point which we have been reporting, but I think it's important to keep coming back to this, that this is a software which is sold only to governments. And I think that's something which is, we already knew that, but again, as the New York Times piece underlines, that it's very closely choreographed between NSO, the Israeli government, and then whichever government it's sold to. So if it has been found in use in India, then it's most likely through the Indian government.
Exactly. So the only people the NSOs are allowed to sell to are official law enforcement agencies, usually intelligence services, but can also be police forces or other kind of law enforcement agencies like the FBI. I think the Project Pegasus that Forbidden Stories, the organization Phineas is affiliated with, that they led, and The Wire and Haaretz were all part of, showed that there was a wish list. Yeah, this wish list is a wish list of a government client. And if you look at all the different potential targets that were in India, it's very hard to imagine who else it could be. I think the one point I would want to add is that we tend to think of governments as, falling into different categories. And of course that's true. Some countries are more democratic than others, some are more liberal than others. But if you look at the wide spectrum of all the different countries that have used it, generally countries misuse this. Once someone has this technology, it can be misused. Even Israel, which is in a democratic country, at least by its own standards, it would authorize the sale to itself. Even here, there was some misuse of this technology. And in that sense, it's not surprising that when it reaches illiberal democracies, for example, countries like Hungary, right, then it's very not surprising that it's abused there. And in that sense, I look less at who the government is and generally fear this kind of technology reaching anyone's hands. And I would also add that it's very possible that there are more people alongside NSO. This deal that India made was $2 billion. It's very likely there are many other firms in Israel that offer similar or different services. And I would not be surprised if NSO's Pegasus is the only one now active in India.
Right. That's a good point. It's worrying to consider that there could be other...
Can I respond to that?
Other spyware firms. Yes, I'm coming to you, PKD. But Phineas, I think it's also important once again to remind our viewers about why this is particularly dangerous as a form of spyware, because a lot of people still look at this and go, oh, but phone taps and all of that happen as a matter of course. But this is invasive and much more problematic in terms of what it can do with your devices, and therefore, what it can do in terms of tampering with democratic processes.
Yeah, so Pegasus, from all of our reporting, it's not just it's not just wiretapping. It's not just intercepting communications en route. It's as if somebody was standing over your shoulder and looking at your phone, and they can see everything that's in your phone. They can access the camera remotely to be able to take pictures. They can know your location. They can exfiltrate all of your texts, emails, messages. It's as if someone has been given full access to your phone. So you can only imagine in any democratic situation what sorts of information would be sought through those means, and what implications that could have for the democratic functioning of a society.
Right. I think that's why, coming back, Venu, to the point, and we'll put up that graphic on the screen, because under Indian law, you can carry out phone taps and surveillance with all the due diligence, but that is just between phone calls. You can just intercept a call in transit. But actually hacking into phones, capturing devices using spyware or malware of the kind that Pegasus is potentially illegal. So not only politically, you might have spied on your opponents and critics. So there's that, apart from the ethics and the morality of it, you may also have broken the law.
In fact, Srinivasan, I want to tell you that I some time ago, a few months ago, I spoke to a former Home Secretary, and I would say he was around at the time that Pegasus was bought, and I asked him this question: Does the present law, which is specific to telephone interception, does it allow an invasion of this, a military-grade invasion of this magnitude, where your emails, your entire office, you run your office through your iPhones.
Yes.
The entire thing can be. So his answer was a very tentative one, saying that maybe a stretched interpretation of the wiretapping can be extended to technology. Getting into all other aspects of your phone. And the definition of technology can be expanded, etc. But he was not very sure. And Srinivasan,
I think that's why.
And the present law, there is a lot of experts feel that the current law does not permit a kind of
military grade
the kind
spyware.
Of intrusion that Pegasus creates.
Right. We're running out of time. PKD Nambiar, the clock is ticking quite literally, PKD, both on the show and for the government, because how long can one go on doing if it was as simple as saying, yes, we bought this to spy on our enemies, to spy on terrorists and all of that, it would have a very different implication. But this constant obfuscation, this constant denial, this constant attacking the media, shooting the messenger, how long?
Srinivasan, may I ask you, today a size of a country like us, a very large country, we may be using as many as hardwares, missiles and weapons and softwares, very many stuff. These are not supposed to be a matter of a public discourse or a public discussion. The only question is that whether we have a one second, Srinivasan.
If you're using it against your citizens, it is a matter of public discussion.
I am actually coming to that. So whether we are using Pegasus, whether we bought Pegasus or we did not bought, that is not the discussion. The only question which the Supreme Court committee is also going to look at it is that is there any unauthorized use? So
you got that wrong because of the government
stonewalling. They bought it.
The Supreme Court's terms of reference say,
tell him that.
Was Pegasus bought? Was it acquired by the government? This is a term of reference. Under what law? Was its use authorized? Who was it used against? PKD Nambiar, all these are questions which have now been, the government has been forced to answer because of the Supreme Court.
Fortunately, I have all the answers, but unfortunately, you will not give me the time to do so.
No, it's not. I'm not silencing. I'm not silencing you, PKD. Come on, you know that you're here on this show almost every other night. But the time is up. The time, we've run out of time.
Only one thing I wanted to tell you.
The biggest censor is my producer in my ear who's saying rap.
One second. I'm saying if my MK Venu, my friend's phone
No,
is tapped by a
it's very
Pegasus or
simple.
for that matter, any other software,
Okay.
I am against it. If
All
the
right, okay, you're
protocol is
against
to-
it. Good.
Srinivas,
So
you
at
must-
least we have some consensus. We're out of time. Sorry about that, but we'll be back on this story. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you all for joining. Good night.